questions of life, from the Shire to the lonely mountain and everything in between. Part 6, an unremarkable hobbit with a remarkable mission. I wonder if I was to ask you what you think defined someone who would be called to a special task in our culture today. And I think we would be looking for the attributes that would make them stand out, that they were of strong character, that they were intelligent, and all the positives. Maybe they work hard and they're striving to get there. And we have to push ourselves all the time to get into these positions, don't we? Maybe you find that in work. And I wonder if you ever find it exhausting that you have to push and continually put yourself in these positions to be noticed. Well, in The Hobbit and in the Christian life, we see an entirely different pattern of how Gandalf calls the Hobbit and how God calls us to be and to live out our calling for him. I'm going to start with a description of Bilbo Baggins from Tolkien. I suppose hobbits need some description nowadays, since they've become rare and shy of the big people, as they call us. They are a little people about half our height and smaller than the bearded dwarfs. Hobbits have no beards. There is little or no magic about them, except the ordinary, everyday sort of thing which helps them to disappear quietly and quickly when large, stupid folk like you and me come blundering along making a noise like elephants, which they can hear a mile off. They are inclined to be fat in the stomach. They dress in bright colours, wear no shoes because their feet grow natural leathery soles and thick warm brown hair like the stuff on their heads, which is curly. Have long clever brown fingers, good-natured faces, and laugh deep fruity laughs, especially after dinner, which they have twice a day when they can get it. See, Bilbo is an unremarkable character, and when you think about him, it seems strange that he would be the one who is going to be called to be a key part of the mission to get to the Lonely Mountain and reclaim the dwarf's homeland. And the treasure. And Bilbo, it just seems, how could he be the one who would be chosen for such a task? Well, this is what Gandalf has to say to it when it's questioned. And the dwarves are talking about an advert for a treasure hunter. And then this is what they say. Some of them do. It's all the same to us. Gandalf told us that there was a man of the sorts that we're looking for in these parts. And he's arranged a meeting here this Wednesday tea time. So they're in the place now. Of course there is a mark, said Gandalf. I put it there myself for very good reasons. You asked me to find the 14th man for your expedition. I chose Mr. Baggins. Just let anyone say I chose the wrong man or the wrong house, and you can stop at 13 and have all the bad luck you like, or go back to digging coal. He scowled so angrily at Gloin that the dwarf huddled back in his chair, and when Bilbo tried to open his mouth to ask a question, he turned and frowned at him and stuck out his bushy eyebrows till Bilbo shut his mouth tight with a snap. That's right, said Gandalf. Let's have no more argument. I've chosen Mr. Baggins, and that ought to be enough for all of you. If I say he is a burglar, he is a burglar. Or will be when the time comes. There is a lot more in him than you guess, and a deal more than he has any idea of himself. You may possibly all live to thank me yet. Now, Bilbo, my boy, fetch the lamp, and let's have a little light on this. And see, Gandalf looks for something different to what the dwarves are looking for in Bilbo. He doesn't look at his appearance. Gandalf knows what's inside of Bilbo. He knows his heart. He knows the nature of him. And he has that specific calling for him to be a burglar, to go and cut the Arkenstone from the clutches of Smaug in the lonely mountain. And this is much like the Christian faith, because if you look in the Bible and you see over the many years that God has used unremarkable people for remarkable things, for part of his adventure, for part of his plan. And it's very much like that with King David in the Old Testament. You've probably heard of David and Goliath, and David, the poor shepherd boy, slays the giant Philistine enemy, and whilst the army were cowering in the rear, the boy who was tending to the sheep stepped forward and killed the big enemy. And right at the start, when David is called for this task, Samuel, who anoints him, God says to Samuel, "Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him." The Lord does not look at things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. When he speaks of rejecting, he's speaking about the previous king, Saul, who was handsome, smart, strong, and outwardly was the right man for the job. But he failed, and he turned away and went his own path. Whereas David was the shepherd boy, and they said not to worry about his appearance, because actually we read later in 1 Samuel 16, chapter 16, "So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers, and from that day on the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David." You see, the Christian life is not about how good we are or what we can do. It's about our hearts, and God can see our hearts. And I wonder if sometimes we feel that we could never do anything, and we sense that maybe God is speaking to us or asking us to be a part of something, but we think, how could it be me? I'm not good enough, I'm not holy enough, I do this, I do that. But actually, God knows your heart. And like Gandalf with Bilbo, Gandalf says, I know he's gonna do this, I know him better, and I'm going to put him through a time of trial and preparation. And actually what we see, the story of the Hobbit, is Bilbo stepping out on this adventure and then entering a time of trial, preparing him for his task, which is such a strong analogy for the Christian faith. You step out in faith. We feel maybe overwhelmed that God could ever have a plan for us, but then he puts us through times of trial, through life, and then we enter into that role that he always had intended for us. The question for us, though, is do we trust God that he will fill us with power, with his Spirit, and give us the strength for the things that we can't have the strength for? Or will we look to ourselves negative and look at our weaknesses and compare ourselves to other people who seem so much stronger than us? See, Bilbo has to learn to acknowledge who he is and then just have faith that he can trust Gandalf, and Gandalf will prove to him over the time that he can. And that's what the Christian faith is inviting you to do, is to step out into this great adventure, to trust in God and trust in this plan, even if it seems way beyond anything you could ever do, or even you don't even know what it is yet. But God is good, and God is someone you can trust in, and he will give you power and he will form you. But will you have the faith to step out?